Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Just when you thought you had this Purdue team figured out, thought they weren't all that good, thought it was likely going to be an underwhelming end to the season, what do? They go on the road and pull off an upset as 6.5-point underdogs, taking down Illinois 31-24. Purdue keeps the Cannon for the sixth time in the past 7 years. We will break it all down here on the show today. Purdue is bowl eligible for the fourth time in Jeff Brom's 6 years, and they are still alive in the Big Ten West race with a chance to go to Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game. Let's jump right in. If you don't already, though, follow us on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. So much to talk about over there. It's football, it's basketball, it's those beautiful few weeks where that seasons overlap. So much to talk about. So follow there and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss a thing. Purdue 31, Illinois 24. You know, all season, this has been a really difficult Purdue team to figure out. You know, after September ended, Purdue lost to Florida Atlantic. Purdue won against Florida Atlantic, but it felt like a loss. 28-26, Purdue won that game. And you really thought this Purdue team wasn't all that good. So what do? They go up to Minnesota and win. They go to Maryland and win. They beat Nebraska at home. And you're feeling really good about this team, thinking they're going to go up to Madison. They're going to pull off the win and that streak. And they have 2 straight non-competitive losses to Wisconsin and Iowa. So naturally, you think, man, maybe they're just not that good. Nope. They go on the road to Illinois. They take down the 7-2 and top 25 Illini. And really, now they're still in position to win the Big Ten West. It wasn't a pretty start to this game for Purdue. Early on, Purdue had a drive where it stalled out in Illinois territory. They elect to go for it on fourth down, which was the right call. And then Illinois goes right down and tears Purdue's defense apart on that first drive and scores. And you got the feeling this was going to be a really long afternoon. You know, Purdue again got the ball into Illinois territory, then asked Mitchell Finneran to do something that we know he's not capable of, and that's kick from 40 plus, especially into the wind. That went as predicted. It did not go in. But credit to Purdue's defense. You know, I thought early on in this game, after that first series, Purdue's defense was in a really difficult spot. They haven't looked good in the past 3 games. You know, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Iowa. This Purdue defense has really struggled. Credit to them for a heck of a performance. This Illinois offense isn't, it's not the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not wildly explosive. But what Purdue's defense did on Saturday, a really nice performance. They held Chase Brown, one of the best running backs in the Big Ten, one of the best running backs in the country, to a season-low 98 yards. And while on the surface that's pretty good, 23 carries, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, to hold him to 4.3 per carry, you'll absolutely take that. They made Tommy DeVito throw the ball, and that's not how Illinois wants to win games. DeVito's been good for them all year, but he's not a quarterback that's going to go win you games. Purdue's defense kept Illinois' offense at check for long enough to give Purdue's offense time to figure things out. Early on in the game, Purdue relied on Devin Mockabee quite a bit, as they should have. Devin Mockabee had another very strong game. 106 yards on the ground on 28 carries. I tweeted out early, he needs to get 30 touches today. And he ended up with 32 with 4 receptions as well. Fantastic game for him. It has been it's been the story of Purdue's season, I think. When you look at the emergence of Maccabee, in this game, Maccabee had 28 carries. Purdue only had 33 as a team. Aidan O'Connell had 2, and then Kobe Lewis and Dylan Downing each with 1, and then 1 credited to the team. I'm not sure what that was, but it was fascinating. If you had Aidan O'Connell and Devin Maccabee running the speed option to spark Purdue's first scoring drive, you'd have been a rich man out in Vegas, because that was something that I hadn't seen, I hadn't thought was even possible. But Purdue used Aidan O'Connell on 2 designed runs, and they were both very effective. They both sparked big drives. Really, really good stuff there to see Purdue get creative. And that's really what I think Purdue fans have been longing for a little bit, was some offensive creativity. It wasn't at all what I would have guessed, but it worked. That was really good stuff there from Purdue. I thought as the game went along, Aidan O'Connell settled in. The win didn't help. I wasn't there. I wasn't in Champaign. I was watching from my nice little couch. I don't know how windy it really was. It looked like it was whipping a little bit. Nothing like the Purdue-Iowa game, but he settled in nicely as the game went along. He threw that interception early on, and, I'd tweeted out, at that point, it was a 15 touchdown to 11 interception ratio for Aidan O'Connell. Now, after the game ended, that's up to 18 to 11. I would still tell you, as a whole, that's probably not where Purdue needed him to be, or needs him to be when you look at the big picture of things. He still leads the Big Ten in interceptions. However, he dug deep and had a really good performance. When Purdue needed him the most, Aidan O'Connell absolutely delivered. You look at that throw to Payne Durham that he went up and got in that end zone that put Purdue up 21-14. That was a big-time play to give his receiver a chance. He had the deep ball to Charlie Jones at the end of the first half. That was thrown as short as it possibly could have been to get over the defender and into Jones's hand. That was a really good throw. That came after he got bailed out a little bit by a pass interference call on Witherspoon that was pass interference, but it wasn't a good decision to throw that pass. In the second half, he was money. Payne Durham had a really good game. 7 receptions for 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. Credit to TJ Sheffield as well. He's been up and down this year, but 6 catches for 72 yards. Of course, none of those bigger than his catch on the 4th and 7 in Illinois territory on Purdue's final drive as the Boilermakers kicked the field goal to go up by 10 points. That reception by Sheffield allowed them to kick that field goal. That was really big. Only 4 catches for Charlie Jones, but when Durham and Sheffield are there, you're able to spread the ball around a little bit more. That's very good. That's ideal. You need to be able to spread that ball around, especially with a DB like Witherspoon, who did a nice job on Charlie Jones for the most part. This game was weird. This was one of the chippiest games, one of the weirder games that I think you'll see. The penalties in this game were insane. I don't like to criticize officials much. I've done it. I've officiated a number of games in my life. I don't like to really criticize officials, but I thought it was pretty clear that there wasn't a whole lot of control in this game. The officials didn't have control over the game very well. These teams combined for 18 penalties for 201 yards. The unsportsmanlike conduct fouls were something else. There was a stretch there where Jamari Brown kind of highlighted this game for Purdue in a negative way. He gets called for pass interference, and it was on a play he did not need to commit pass interference. It was a 3rd and long, I think. DeVito throws it deep, underthrown. Brown could have deflected it, but instead he pushes off to get that interception. There's a flag. Then he gets beat in the corner on a touchdown, and on the ensuing kickoff, Jamari Brown and Sidney Brown from Illinois each rip their helmets off and are yelling at each other. Just weird stuff you shouldn't see. I thought as a whole, Purdue's team discipline left much to be desired. This isn't the first time it's been a problem. Look back to that game at Syracuse. Purdue shot themselves in the foot. Purdue lost that game because of their lack of discipline. It didn't cost Purdue today, but boy, it was a problem. There was that kickoff where Illinois, Purdue committed 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on the extra point. Illinois gets to kick off from the 35-yard line of Purdue. That was weird. That wasn't good. There were plenty of breakdowns. Purdue got lucky to some degree. A wide open touchdown got dropped by Illinois' tight end. He burnt O.C. Brothers, who slipped and then dropped the pass. Illinois had a number of dropped passes on the day. Let me see if I can find how many passes they dropped. It was a number of them, but you can only do so much. And when Purdue needed to come through, they did. That interception, Lawrence Johnson tipped it up in the air. Kyron Douglas picked it off. This defense hadn't forced a turnover in some time. Did they force one against Iowa or Wisconsin? If they did, I'm not remembering it. So they needed to force a turnover bad. You felt like they were due for one, and that came at the best possible time. Purdue kind of hung to that 28-21 lead for a little bit. And, boy, I really just kept thinking to myself, Purdue is not going to win this game 28-21. Purdue went up 28-21 with 13 minutes to go in the game. I knew that Purdue was not going to be able to hang on to that and win 28-21. They got that interception. That set up the Mitchell Finneran field goal to put Purdue ahead, and that ultimately did it. Credit to Jack Ansell. I thought he had a really nice game for Purdue when they needed him to badly. I know he's been a little banged up lately. He did everything Purdue needed him to do. He had some really nice punts, both with and against the wind. Purdue overall, you take out some of the discipline issues. It wasn't a great day to throw the ball, but they still did a nice job with it. Maccabee was fantastic. The offensive line deserves some real credit here. Aidan O'Connell didn't get sacked once. He had a lot of time to throw on some plays. There were a few plays where he had time to scramble around a bit and look for something downfield and find it. Real credit to the offensive line. They paved the way for Maccabee as well. Purdue had 397 yards of offense. Illinois was only giving up about 250 total yards of offense per game. That's awesome for Purdue. That's really good on a day where the conditions weren't ideal. They weren't awful for Purdue like they were against Iowa, but they sure as hell weren't ideal. And Purdue came out and did put together a really nice game against a good Illinois defense. Major credit to the offensive line. Purdue had a good game plan. It worked. Very, very nice job by Purdue, who, after that Iowa game, I thought it was fair to question the effort and the energy level that they played with. Not today. Not yesterday, as I record this Sunday morning. Purdue did a heck of a job going on the road and getting this win. Purdue's bowl eligible. Never take that for granted. If there's one thing that folks should have learned, whether they did or not, I don't know. But from 2008 to 2016, Purdue only went to 2 bowl games. And those were 6-6, Detroit Bowl and Heart of Dallas Bowl. Never take going to bowl games for granted. Obviously, that you want that to be an expectation rather than an accomplishment. But to get to another bowl game, always a good thing, always worth celebrating. The next 2 games will go a long way in deciding what caliber of bowl game Purdue goes to. But they're bowl eligible. They still have a chance at the Big Ten West. Iowa defeated Wisconsin yesterday, so you have a 4-way tie for first place right now. Iowa, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota. Purdue has the tiebreaker over Illinois and Minnesota. So if Purdue wins out, they finish ahead of Illinois and Minnesota no matter what they do. The question comes with Iowa. Purdue needs the Hawkeyes to lose once more for Purdue to win the West. Iowa goes to Minnesota on Saturday, and then on Black Friday, they host Nebraska to close out the season. Purdue has to have Iowa lose one of those games, and Purdue has to win out for Purdue to win the Big Ten West. Is it likely? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see what that point spread is on Iowa at Minnesota. But with 2 weeks to go, Purdue has a chance here. We'll have plenty previewing the Northwestern game later this week. Early indications are it's going to be chilly. Looking at the weather right now, looks like a high of 31 on Saturday in West Lafayette. Going to be a cold one. I'm recording this at 9:39 as we speak. There we go, noon game. Just refreshed Twitter. It'll be a noon game on FS1 per Mike Carmen of the Journal and Courier. Yeah, there it is from Purdue. It's a nooner, so noon game against Northwestern. Wildcats are 1-9, a game Purdue will be heavily favored in. Did want to close out here, just touch a little bit on basketball. They won Friday night 63-44 against Austin Peay. A game you're probably not dying to go rewatch. It was ugly. It was rather low energy inside Mackey Arena, kind of a sleepy game. Look, Purdue won despite going 2 of 19 from 3, and they won fairly handily. That's a positive. That's a positive in its own. Austin Peay wasn't very good. And when I say wasn't very good, they weren't good at all. But you can only play who's on your schedule. Purdue has now really won comfortably in both of their bye games, and that's what you want to see. Things certainly ramp up with Marquette this week. I don't know how good Marquette really is, but they will certainly be more formidable than Milwaukee and Austin Peay were. Austin Peay went 28% from the field and 4 for 24 from 3. One thing to note, Purdue's defense is better this year. And I know comparing last year's team to this year's is pretty difficult to do. They're 2 very different dynamics, but the defense is a lot better. Matt Painter talked about post-game how that would have been a game that last year's team would have really struggled to win. This year's team had no problem doing it. Zach Edey was unbelievable. 30 points, 11 rebounds. Kind of shook off a game against Milwaukee where he wasn't at his best on offense and he dominated. You saw a little bit of what happens when you have 2 freshman guards in the starting lineup. Fletcher Lawyer had good shots. They just weren't falling. 0 for 5 from 3. I don't think you'll see many games like that from him. And early on, Braden Smith had some turnovers. Again, that's going to be part of the battle. It's a big adjustment from playing high school basketball to college basketball. But overall, Purdue fought through a really bad shooting performance to win a game. And I think that alone is something you should be pretty pleased with. Had Purdue even shot 6 of 19, gone a little under 33%. You tack on 12 more points to this game, and it's an absolute bloodbath. So you'll take it. Purdue gets a win. They move on, and things get real here. You have Marquette coming up on Tuesday. We'll talk about that in the midweek show. We'll record that on Wednesday night, have it to you on Thursday morning. And then after that, Purdue has some time off before PK 85 and then a Big Ten ACC matchup at Florida State. As they say, things are about to get pretty real here for Purdue. We will learn quite a bit about this team. But hey, this time of year is a blast. Both football and basketball are playing. There's a lot to like about both right now. We'll learn a lot. So be sure to follow on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. So much to talk about there. Basketball, Tuesday night. We will have the midweek episode previewing Northwestern. Start sending over those questions on Twitter. I'm sorry I missed the Q&A last week. Be sure to send those over for this week's show, and we will talk to you then. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Purdue 31, Illinois 24. The Cannon stays in West Lafayette for the 6th time in 7 years, and Purdue is bowling yet again. Talk to you guys on Thursday. Until then, take care.